This podcast is brought to you by Amusement Warehouse Magazine, the industry's largest trade publication. We cover amusement parks, carnivals, fairs, festivals, history, safety columns. We really got it all when it comes to the amusement business. Only remaining print publication in the amusement industry on a regular basis. So if you're interested in what the amusement industry has to offer, subscribe today. You can subscribe by logging on to amusementwarehouse.com, carnivalwarehouse.com, or amusementparkwarehouse.com. Welcome to another edition of the Amusement Warehouse Podcast. Today, we are especially pleased to have with us Adam Heffron, Executive Director of the Ohio State Fair, fairly new there, just a few years, right? And he's joining us from Columbus, Ohio. I'm assuming he's behind you.
Yeah,
Welcome,
that's
Adam.
where I am. Thanks, Ron. Good to be with you. What fun to chat with you about our fair. And I haven't been here quite a few years yet. Still about a year and a half. So I'm not quite the new guy, but I don't have 2 years tenure into this organization yet. So about a year and a half, 2 fairs.
There's been a lot of new fair managers recently. It seems like, or people that are within 5 years at their jobs. It seems like the last few people I interviewed, except for some, have been there forever, but a few have just been there a couple of years.
Yeah, time goes fast, doesn't it? What you think is a couple of years is always twice that. But yeah, it's good to have new blood in the industry. I started, as you know, in my career here way back in the mid '90s, and I'm a rebounder. I'm a boomerang, and came back a year and a half ago, and just excited to be here. And some things change and some things don't. So it's fun to be a part of planning for the future of this institution with all the projects we have going on the ground.
What are some of the things that don't change besides Kathy Amspaugh?
Yeah, Kathy has been here for many years. She is definitely long in the tooth and a great asset for this organization. So we're very fortunate to have her. And when
she's a concession dynamo. She's unbelievable.
I know. She is been doing the same thing, working with all our events, takes the lead with our event rental and contracts, and then books all our commercial space during the fair, and then works with a team that is in her department handling the concession side of things. So yeah, I just where you get that kind of drive and energy and expertise and longevity is kind of hard to find these days. So yeah, she is definitely a pillar in this organization.
Great person. So you come in the fair business, pretty honestly. Your dad was the longtime manager of the Minnesota State Fair, the great Minnesota State Fair, and you grew up around some people, Jerry Hammer and Rick Fournette and Jim Sinclair and all those people. What inspired you to get into the fair business if it wasn't your dad? And then who else had big influences on you as far as mentoring and wanting to become a state fair manager yourself?
Ron, that's such a great question, and I ask myself that all the time. What am I doing in this business? and here's a simple answer. When my dad was working at the Minnesota State Fair, he had my family had the opportunity to move on the fairgrounds when I was just born, and my dad jumped at it and said, "Sure, I'll live on the fairgrounds and move my family there." So it's from when I was 6 months old until moving out for college. That's what I knew is growing up on the fairgrounds. And I would look at my dad and think, wow, this is the only job for me. This is, I wanted to be a garbage collector, but that wouldn't have been as fun as being a fair manager because it's all fun, right? That's all it is. That was my dad. In his day-to-day was just all about fun, producing the fair, right?
And you only work 2 weeks a year, even better.
That's it. That's right. What else would he do the rest of the year? Just twiddle his thumbs waiting for the next fair. But just had, just immersed in it, from a high level, and in the day in and day out, just growing up on the fairgrounds just obviously sparked a big passion and desire in me to be in this business. And so that's sort of, I guess, how I kind of grew into it. And then very fortunate, you mentioned some really strong names just a minute ago. And those were people that in particular, my dad, just watching his business acumen and his ethics and the way he treated people and the way he treated and did business as a whole really was forming to me. And hopefully I'm carrying forward all those lessons from those great mentors, including my dad, forward. And this is it's a different time and a different era and a different way to lead and manage an organization than when my dad was doing it. And he's been retired and passed away for many years, but some great people that are themselves transitioning and retiring out of the business. And so I guess it's sort of up to me to carry on the great lessons I've learned from them in my management and leadership of the Great Ohio State Fair and Exposition Center.
Yeah, they're both tremendous events, no question about it. Just Minnesota has such long tentacles. Like, there's people from Minnesota all over the fair business who have left their footprint. When you were in Ohio the first time, Rick Fournette was just the newly hired manager who had come from Minnesota, and Jim Sinclair, of course, been there forever, and Jerry Hammer stayed on and went on. Now you have Renee Alexander, who she told me when I interviewed her that Jim Sinclair didn't hire the first time.
That's interesting. There's another person working there right now, and she'll say the same thing about me. She was interviewing for a job when I was at the Minnesota State Fair, and I turned her down and hired somebody else. And now she's back, been working there full time for many years. And so she reminds me of the same thing. You remember, you didn't hire me. And I said, well, it's a good thing, because then you came back in a different position and you've got some real longevity. But that's interesting about Renee. So Renee and I sort of exited the fair about the same time. She worked for an organization in Minneapolis, an event planning production company, and I left the fair too about the same time, maybe a year or two after she did. And I worked for the Convention Bureau in Minneapolis. She went back to work, obviously, at the fair full time after that, and then I went a different route. I traveled to Wisconsin to run the events department there. So anyway, sort of, interesting where life takes you, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you've been to a few, I don't want to say bounced around in the sense that you're just ping ponging all over the place, but you've been to a few pretty major fairs and learned how they run and how they're different than maybe what you did in Minnesota, what you did in Ohio, everywhere else. Talk about some of those experiences, where you went and what you did and what you learned.
Yeah, Ron, that's great. Great question. I think, some people, will say you can't keep a job down, Adam. And it's interesting. My defense of that is I never really planned to be and follow a certain direction in my career. It was never in the plans. I was always looking to contribute to the best of my ability. And so in that process, we got phone calls saying, hey, why don't you come be my COO at the Washington State Fair? Oh, okay. Or why don't you run my new department at the Wisconsin State Fair? So my journey has been kind of unique, I think, for people in this business. Maybe not so unique in others. I've been in the Convention Bureau and Convention Center business. I did that for 6 years, and that wasn't really something I ever intended to do. But I sidestepped and did that for about 6 years or so plus, and just took a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience out of it. So before getting back into the fair business, I left the Washington State Fair and went to work for Summerfest in Milwaukee, which is the world's largest music fest. So I did that for about 3 years, and during the COVID times, which was fascinating for all of us to be in the working world during that time period. But stepped outside of and worked in a music fest in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for 3 years, as I said, and just gained a whole different understanding of the business. We didn't have, we had a sky ride, but we didn't necessarily have mobile amusements at all on property. But we were a festival for 11 days, and we had music as our primary sort of programming of our venue and of our event. So I don't know, just all these kind of places have taken me, back and forth and around the country, and I think very fortunate from the standpoint of, you work under different leaders and different leadership types, different organization types. And I think that helps kind of form you. And I think what it's created in me is either a sense of craziness or the ability to ground myself and realize there are different ways to tackle problems and issues that are informed by one kind of organization or one leader. I've been formed by many, many great ones in this industry. So that I'm very fortunate to have had that experience.
Have all the entities you've worked for been nonprofits, basically running the event?
You are dead on. Some are 501c3s, some are 501c6s. Yeah, all of them have been nonprofits. Even the Washington State Fair was private, but it's still a nonprofit. So I haven't worked for anything but a nonprofit.
It's the one missing piece in your resume.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Yeah, I think at this point, I don't know what the benefit would be if someone wants to give me stock in the company and start working for, a publicly traded company. I'd be willing to do that. It would have to be the right fit for me. But right now, the Ohio State Fair and Expo Center is a pure state agency. So I answer to a commission that's appointed by the governor, and I work very closely with the governor of the state of Ohio, which is Governor Mike DeWine. And I'm very grateful for that because he is one big fair fanatic and really supportive of what we do here at the fair. So that is a real positive for this institution and for my tenure here, is to work with the governor of the state of Ohio.
So when you came in and you followed in the footsteps of Virgil Strickler, who was there for 1.5 million years and was in charge of the ag and all that stuff, Rick Furnett, and of course Billy Inman. No, I'm just kidding. Before him. Yeah. For those that don't know, the Ohio State Fair famously switched from a pay one price to a non-pay one price format. It was like $5 to get in and ride all the rides. And they switched, and the manager that year was a guy, I think he was a used car salesman, owner. He owned a used car dealership of some kind or something like that, Billy Inman. And that poor guy, he had a tough job because he had to switch away from the $5 to a normal pricing thing. And it was a little rough, especially for somebody not from the fair business. And then they brought in Rick, and he righted the ship, and you guys have been off ever since. But you had two really, really strong leaders before you. So it's, I guess you really take a hard look at what they've done and not just kind of make willy-nilly changes, because I'm sure most of what they were doing is probably pretty good, pretty well thought out and well planned. So what are some of the goals you have for the fair coming in, or what did you think? How could you make an impact, and what were you going to do?
Yeah, you're right, Ron. It's always hard to follow in great leaders' footsteps because of the great things they've done and how well embraced they were. Virgil was here 10 years, I think, as the director of agriculture, and then 20 years as a manager, the longest tenured fair manager at the Ohio State Fair.
Is that right?
Being a political entity, I think up to that point, it might have been Jack Faust, maybe Furnett, that was here for around 9-ish years. Don't quote me on that, but
Sounds right.
About half the amount of time that Rick was here, and or half the amount of time, sorry, that Virgil was here. And Virgil made a great impact on this institution. And I think one of the things, if you ask me about the way forward, is certainly don't screw up the good things that any of those previous leaders did, because they did so many great things to progress the organization forward. I guess my charge is to continue that great leadership in a different time and era. As I mentioned earlier, we have such a big project in front of us, construction, $460 million worth of work that we're doing. A lot of it underground, infrastructure changes, several new buildings, new gate, new amphitheater, a new carousel, hand carved, hand manufactured just north of us. So a lot of the
You said a carousel?
Yes. Yeah. So
that's pretty cool.
company up in Marion, Ohio, an hour north of us, is customizing a hand carved wooden carousel. They manufacture everything from the decking to the motors to
Wow.
all the rounding boards, the mechanism entirely. And then we're having a glue lam structure, architecturally beautiful octagon built around the building, and so that's one piece of this project. But there's many more. Renovating our dairy building. It's a long list, Ron. There's about 32 different projects, and all of this is being done. Buildings raised, building being built back up, with events happening and the fair happening, and so I guess that was one thing that really excited me about this position at this time and place in my career, was to be here on property when $460 million worth of work was being done. So it's a once in a lifetime for this organization and for me and for everyone working here. I'm really thrilled that we all have a chance to make a big impact with this construction going on, which will all be done in time for the 2026 Ohio State Fair.
Is that right? That's pretty quick.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, it's an aggressive schedule, but they're going to get it done. That's the goal, is to have everything completed. We finished our main gate and a few other minor projects, most of the infrastructure, some of the hardscaping up on the north end of the property, but then everything will carry forward on the south, and the buildings will be completed in time for the 26th fair.
That's fantastic. And what a big project. That's a nice chunk of money to be able to spend on the fairgrounds. Should look amazing, I would imagine, after you're done.
Yeah, it's, I go back to the governor really being the push forward at the state level, at the government level, and then of course all the elected officials that are in state government here to get behind and support the funding of this project, which felt 100% in place last summer. About the time I came on board is when the rest of the funding got approved. So we've hit the ground running, and just truly are grateful for those that believe in the state fair and our future, and that came from all the legislators and the governor. So we're going to rock this place. It's going to be an incredibly different fairgrounds starting in 2026 at the state fair.
Now the governor is done after next year. I think he's got one more year or something like that. Isn't there an election coming up?
Yeah, you're right, Ron. He terms out. Governor Mike DeWine terms out at the end of 2026. So we're fortunate to have him for this. He's in his second term, and he's got 1.5 years left.
And then hopefully, whatever new governor comes in, I don't. The fair used to be pretty political, right? I mean, back in the day, it was like the fair manager would change when the political party would change or something like that. And hopefully, they've transcended that, and you're just a fair manager, a professional fair manager.
Yeah, I hope so. Virgil was able to live through several administrations, even a switch from Republican to Democrat back to Republican. So I don't know how he did it, but he did it. He made it through. And but if you look to the history, right, way back in the day when there was typically a change of an elected official in office at the governor's level, then it changed the face of who was managing the fair. So you can look at the history of the fair management here, and it would be every 3 to 4 years there would be a new fair manager. So for Virgil to last as long as he did was a testament to his overall great leadership of this institution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when Rick came in, that was the whole point, was they were not going to do a political thing. They were going to do a professional fair manager. And those were also back in the days when the fair used to get 3 million people, supposedly.
Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't around to count all the heads back then. It would have taken me a lifetime to count 3 million people, but
or have to account for the money where it is.
Yeah, it was quite the event. Yeah. Well, they didn't have electronic gates back then, so
3 million times 5 is 15 million.
Do the math. Yeah. I don't know. That was long before my time, even my first round here. So I don't know what the true attendance was. I'm sure it was accurate back on what they reported back then. How am I to say otherwise?
I heard stories that back, because we put out now the top 50 list of fairs and by attendance, and that Texas and Ohio used to be like a political thing. Like they would wait to report the number until the other guy reported the number or something like that. They were fighting for the top fair in the country or the top whatever it was, and so that was, I guess, the impetus for doing that. But and I didn't realize at one time the CNE used to be the largest fair in North America. I read a book and I thought the guy made a typo, but it was. I mean, I couldn't believe it. What a big
Well, that
trend-setting thing.
that could make sense, right? Because Toronto is such a big city. I could see them drawing a lot of people to their fair. I've not been to the CNE, but been around the grounds. It's quite a place. But
It was huge
yeah, who
back in the
knows?
day. It was trendsetter. It was a real big
Isn't it?
trendsetter.
We still do this, right, Ron? We sort of gauge the success of our event, our fair, based on attendance, and I don't think that's necessarily a true gauge of the quality of the fair. For us this year, we were subject to literally 9 out of 12 days had bad weather, storms, high heat and humidity. So it wasn't until we finally got the last 3 days in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday where the humidity broke and the heat broke and we had clear skies. So and the tremendous amount of people showing up at our gate was awesome. So it things really shined for us the last 3 days. So we made up some ground, but I don't know. It just we've all fallen into this trap. I shouldn't say we all because some of us don't, but measuring success based on attendance, and it's one barometer of really many
Right.
that we should measure the quality of our events on.
I agree. And I don't agree necessarily with the anti-attendance wing. There's some out there that just don't want to report attendance, but attendance, it is a measure in some way of how well you're doing. It's also a measure for sponsors and for other people, how many eyeballs they're getting, and it's not any, mark on you if you had some bad weather and you don't have as many people. I mean, that's crazy to think that, because you had 4 days of rain or 5 days of rain or something like that, that you're suddenly a bad fair manager now because you're down a little bit. I think attendance is just, what it is. It's attendance. It's a way to measure. It's an interesting thing for people that are learning about the fair, about how many people go in and visit the place, and how important it is to the people of Ohio to go to their fair. To turn out in close to 1 million people, whatever you might get in a given year.
Well, and we're always chasing the previous year, aren't we? Right? We're always looking back a year. Where why don't we look back an average of 5 years or 3 years or
Yeah,
something like that? But because I think one year, this year the weather could be, or the economy, or there's things that we don't control, certainly that impact the weather. And so if we look more like at averages over a several year period, I think that's more indicative of
of course.
what we should be looking at. But it could be anything from, hey, spending to exit surveys to a number of things. I think are kind of good barometers to work towards and work from as it relates to measuring the success
Yeah,
of your event.
scholarships given, how you did with the
Right.
livestock auction, all those things are great. They're not as sort of sexy as the other things, but they're good.
True.
And it's sort of self-inflicted if you're worried about the press or somebody else comparing it to last year. I think like you said, you point out a full 5 years, we're in the middle, but we had more days of rain this year, whatever else it was. You also have a very successful fair manager who I tease all the time about it, Rick Furnett, who had the largest drop in attendance ever in his first year. Went from 3 million to 800,000.
Yeah, a different way of calculating attendance, as we talked about. His math was different than his predecessors. Is different than anybody else. So he jumped into it feet first his first year, didn't he?
I remember because I was working at the time for the carnival company, and the AB reporter came and said, "Well, what do you think? It went from 3 million to 800,000 people." And I said, "Well, those 800,000 people spent a whole lot more than the 3 million did." So I was pretty happy, with how things went.
Yeah. Back to the spending being another great barometer of your successful event, right?
It is a great barometer. We're actually going to probably use, if not this year, 100%. Then in the coming year, we've been using a lot of cell phone data stuff like, AI, Placer AI, and other AI tools to gauge attendance instead of just, getting whatever number somebody throws us and accept it as a gospel. because and there's some great, Minnesota's right on. Several other friends of mine that run a tight ship are right on. But then you get a couple of these fairs, you're like, they say they get X, and then you're like, it's X divided by two, really. And they're like, well, because some of the people we don't count. I said, but you can't not count half. It's not possible. They have cell phones. Maybe 10% don't, or kids, or something like that. But you're not, we're not missing, half your attendance. So, that might straighten things out a little bit with accurate numbers, or more accurate numbers, or how you report, because there's really no industry standard, because a lot of people, they count whatever concessionaires, or they count whatever every day, some days, and there's not really. Cheryl Flood asked me when I was at Florida a couple of years, well, should we count those people? I said, well, I think the majority of fairs count them. They're eyeballs, right? They're there, they're bodies, but some count to an excess, like you're saying. So maybe it will be a good thing. It'll come to maybe standardize the how things are reported, or what to do. But some people are, like you say, I think they take too much worry, or maybe they're graded or something by their bosses or peers or boards on the attendance numbers. But I don't know why they would get so worked up about it. It's not really that big a deal. You drew a lot of people for the place you come. Most fairs do a great job, and they draw a lot of people, and they do a great. Some of the California fairs restricted during COVID and post COVID because they didn't want too many people, so they limited the number of people per day, which is fine. I mean, nobody's giving them any crap about that. They're just saying, hey, this is what we get.
Yeah, I think a lot of my brethren in this business would say that what's most important is who's paying to come through your gate, right?
Sure.
Because admission is probably our biggest revenue variable in the consideration of what we do. So I'm that's what I'm interested is to see growth and revenue from a gate perspective. That tells me there are people willing and able and wanting to pay to come into your event. And then how we all do this, from a credentialed standpoint, or free admission, or admittance, or whatever, everybody does it differently. And so, and that's great. And, I don't know if you would find a standard way. Now, more and more of us are doing electronic ticketing, right? So that really kind of helps build, I guess, I want to say credibility, because I'm not saying that we're not doing this from a credible standpoint, but we all have different ways of accounting for attendance. When I was a kid growing up at the Minnesota State Fair, I remember seeing the ledger sheet, an actual ledger sheet for multiple fairs around the turn of the century. And then the person keeping track of attendance every day, they would do a draw of tickets and account, and they would write down the number of people that came through a gate at certain times of the day. And that was probably about as accurate as whoever was counting the tickets and writing the number down. So I think we've gone beyond that, much to the benefit of electronic ticketing. But I guess I don't get so hung up on attendance. I guess ultimately what I want to see is smiles on faces and great exit surveys, and
absolutely,
and concessionaires saying, oh, we had a great fair, and our carnival saying, oh, that was a great gross I had. And how are we going to get better next year? That might be oversimplifying things a bit, but that's ultimately what I'm going after is, how did the bottom line turn out? And then ultimately, were people happy with the production of the fair? And good reactions and a good fair produces another great fair the year after. If you didn't do such a great job one year, I think people vote with attending the next year. So as long as you keep building attendance and keeping an audience coming back year after year, I think you're doing your job.
Makes sense to me. What's one of the biggest challenges you face now being a fair manager? Is it cost of artists and music? Is it labor? Is it, rising prices? What do you think the biggest strains are for a fair manager, or difficulties to overcome?
Oh, that's a great question, Ron. I think there
Are you grading all my questions? You're always telling me they're great. I'm getting nervous now.
Yeah. Okay.
One time I gotta say, that's a horrible question, Ron.
Yeah, I'll tell you that if it is, and I'll just tell you I'm not going to answer that horrible
You're like the
question.
waitress who says everything's good at the restaurant. I start to get nervous because there's got to be something bad here.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a special of the day. Well, if what did Seinfeld say? If it's so special, why don't you have it on the menu all the time, right? But
Or it's grown locally. I did that once. It's grown locally. I said, well, how do I know the guy's not like a serial killer who has hogs or something like that? He has dead bodies buried next to his hogs. Just
hey,
because it's close doesn't mean it's good. I mean, it just
but
means
is it organic, right?
it's
Is
close.
that
Yeah, it's organic or whatever
if
that
it's
means.
organic and it's far away, I'm okay with it, right?
Well, they kept saying
So,
local. It's local. It's right around the corner.
yeah, how do you define
Okay.
local, right?
I
Is
saw a
that
crazy guy the
local,
other day,
like
right around the
local
corner too.
crazy? uh, so, what was your question? Because it was a bad one.
The terrible one was why didn't your
Oh,
kid go to William and
challenges.
Mary?
Yeah, challenge is remembering your really dumb questions. Ron, that's a loaded question because, I wish I could say I managed a fair 20 years ago and I can compare 20 years ago to today because I've only been managing this fair for a year and a half for this event and this facility. You made a point about entertainment, the cost of entertainment, and we realized just to compete last year we had to increase our paid acts by 10 to 15%, which we did. We had a
Are those music
few.
acts or like free acts? Excuse me. Didn't mean to
Those are
interrupt.
music acts. Those are paid
Okay.
acts. So they're
Like in the
ticketed
Celeste
events
Center or whatever you call that thing now.
in our
The
Celeste Center, yeah, our
yeah.
grandstand, our paid venue. And so we upped our budget and we actually had really solid bookings and a really good return on our investment with our acts in the Celeste Center this year. So yeah, raising that level of spend in our paid entertainment area really did help. Is that a challenge? Yeah, I think competing against all the other venues and festivals, booking entertainment has been a challenge for many of us in the fair business for several years, many years.
Yeah.
I think it's finding staff. Go ahead, Ron. You were going to say
I was going to say,
something.
and professionals, it seems to me that most fairs, we're not really in the concert business. And people aren't, I mean, it depends on the fair, but people aren't used to going to a concert at our whatever venue we might have, whether it's a grandstand or some other place. It's not like we're a year-round concert venue. So all of a sudden we got to be in this business. There was a guy I was interviewing the other day they do horse racing 2 weeks a year during the fair. So he's got to be a horse racing expert somehow. But the margins on the concert with the big corporate entities now that are in it, there's no room. There's no room for error. You really can't make a mistake. So it's a tough business to be in casually, which is what I believe we're the way we're in it. I mean, yeah, we have advisors and all that stuff, but we're not doing this day in and day out like the top professionals in the industry.
Well, and our window of booking, right, for our fairs is very small, right? We don't
Right.
have the opportunity to book, for our fair a band that can perform today. They have to fit in that,
The day after the fair he's coming.
yeah, the day after, so you got to fit into that window of your schedule, and then you have non-compete clauses, so you got to work around like us working around other markets in our area too. Is a challenge because there's there are a lot of cities not too far from us in Columbus, Ohio, that we compete against. So there's that. So there are many variables, and
Yeah.
so booking big name acts is not for the faint of heart. You have to have some money, and you have to be willing to take a risk. And I think that if you make a wise choice and take some calculated risks and book the right bands, you'll be okay. But if not, you could get harmed because we're not on a
You can get
percentage
harmed.
anymore. Yeah, we're on a high guarantee with these acts. So there's not a lot of room for a lot of wiggle room, so to speak. But I think that's one challenge we face is certainly the rising cost of doing business. That anyone is in business now are faced with just high costs, whether it's in construction or whether it's producing a fair or an event. Just the third party services that we need to have work done on the grounds is, rising exponentially higher and higher every year. Any work that we have done maintaining the facilities, our utility costs are going up from our kilowatt charge from 4 cents to 7 cents in October. Just it's trying to keep pace with the cost of doing business, I think, is probably the biggest challenge that most of us face in this business.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so I think that's one, key challenge for us. And entertainment really falls in line with that too, right? The rising cost of you've heard it and seen it, just the rising cost of booking acts, as I mentioned earlier. And then, with our carnival, the cost for Tally Amusements and all our amusement companies to do business is rising, whether they're, relying on paying higher costs and wages for H-2B visas or local help or carrying their staff from, their home headquarters to their winter quarters to the fair site that they're playing, the location. It's just kind of hard to get your arms around, and so you're constantly having to think of ways to generate more revenue. And we always, I think, in our business want to be a value proposition. We want to be the best value for our clients.
I'm glad you said that.
Yes, as possible, right? And so sometimes, it hurts to think about raising your gate. And I remember my dad back in the day would lament from going from $4.25 from adult admission to $4.50. It was a big
That's
conversation.
the frugal Minnesota people.
That's the frugal. My dad wanted it to be affordable for everyone. Everyone in the state of Minnesota should be able to afford to go to the fair. And
I love that mentality.
It was a struggle to jump from $4.25 to $4.50. And
I that's been ingrained in me. There used to be a little fair in South Carolina, Union, South Carolina. The guy who ran it, and it's a tiny town, but it was a good fair. But the guy who ran it, he used to have these ridiculous, like, wristbands were like $8 for the rides, and admission was, I don't know, something really cheap. And at the time it was Amusements of America, and Phil Vivona would go up to him and say, "We need to go to at least a 15. 15's like an industry average." And he would fight him, and I'd say, "Why, Daryl, why?" He said, "Ron, we only have however many people he had in the town, like 4 people, I forget the number, but he said, I got to have those people come every day. Every day, I want them to be out here. I want these grounds to be full. I want people to be excited about it. I don't want them to save up to have to come one day." And that's always stuck with me, because I think we are a volume business, right? I mean, I'd rather get 5 people at $1 than 1 person at $5. I just wrote a column. Actually, it's coming out this month for the magazine on, I did a promotion at the fair, at one of the fairs I manage in New York this year, and we did an opening night promotion where we super lowered the price. It was basically free rides, with your admission price. And, some said, well, we might lose money because it's not that bad a night, but it's a pretty good night. And we wound up, truthfully, we're up a little bit money wise, but we had a whole ton more people. So the food made a lot more money. The parking made more money. Everybody made more money. And it was a little more exciting. And then there's more people that touched the fair that are going to come back on another day, or that told their friend about it, or whatever else the ripple effects are of it. And to me, that's a winner all day long. I'll take it 100% of the time. More people, of course, there's going to be some fairs like, South Florida Fair. Matt Walsmith will say, "Ron, I don't have any parking. I can't get them in here." Okay. So in a few cases, that might not be true, but by and large, with a fair, you want to have the most people you can at the lowest price, or whatever keeps that number from being hurt, with these. So raising the price isn't a panacea all the time. And I think you're on that. And I think that's great, because that's a great attitude to have in this business. I'm done with my preaching.
No, that was beautiful.
I'm going to set it to music and use it as a clip on Facebook.
Yeah, I think everyone's got a little bit different philosophy on their gate and what to charge. There's always that, the old elasticity of demand, right? By increasing.
That's my favorite thing. I love elasticity.
Yeah, we all should have been, have degrees in economics in this business, because we think that, raising your gate by whatever you want to raise your gate by, you're going to achieve that same revenue per head that you did the year before. And, some people might not go to the fair because it's an extra dollar.
You
but you
can't have
don't
one
know.
person at the front gate, a loan officer from the bank to pay $50,000 to come in, instead of getting whatever 50,000 other people to come in. So we don't work that way. We work on volume. We don't work on getting the premium because we don't sell out. We got room most of the time.
Yeah, room.
And it's supposed to be a celebration, like your dad would say. And I think, if I imagine talking to your dad when I was a kid back in the day, but he was always that way about getting as many people to come as he could. And, he was so, I mean, I learned a lot from him too. I didn't talk to him by any means all the time, but I did have the opportunity to have a few conversations with him as I was coming into the business. And he was always so generous with his time. He's amazing. You talk to anyone, I'm like, why are you talking to me? What the hell do I know? I don't know anything. Just coming in, but it's like, well, Adam and Rick. Okay. So,
Yeah, okay, you're okay. Well, yeah, I think it was a philosophy the fair had that served them really, really well. But they also had an all pay gate that I think back in the 50s, they instituted. It was a board policy that anybody coming to the fair, including the governor, had to pay admission. And so everyone was on a fair and equal footing when they went to the fair. And, how do you argue with paying, $2, $3, $4, $5 to get into the gate either back in the day? No, it's time value of money. So, that $4 back then is, more like $14 or $20 now, of course. But
Adam's giving a MBA class here today on this podcast.
Yeah, that's
Elasticity of
right.
demand, time value of money, and do net present value next, and then we'll be all set.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Let's do some elasticity of demand. Let's do an acid test on this whole financial formula that we're working on. But I think it's really important, though, that we think about these things. That's just not, we're just not picking a number out of the hat and just saying, oh, let's go up $1 at our gate and it's going to yield us what we yielded, but $1 more per head the year before. I think but the tough thing is the let's say the intangibles, the thing that we talked about earlier on, right? Like you can't control the weather, you can't control the economy, or if it's an election year and those sorts of things. So each circumstance is different year after year. So it's not really, can't really put that financial formula or that economics formula to it, because there's things that we just can't control at all. So
yeah, I call it like sort of the death spiral in a sense, like what you were talking about with bringing in more people. If you're getting more or the same revenue with less people, eventually that's going to go bad for you. As you continue to get less and less people, because it's not the same event as you get down the road. You want to get that volume, because eventually, like I said, you can't get one person paying $50,000 to come in. You always need you need an attendance. And I think the price, I also think it's delayed by a year at least, that people, if you raise your price to, what's your price now for your gate?
$12 for an adult.
$12. So if you went to $17 this year, probably a good number of the people wouldn't notice until they got there. And they go to pay and they go, what the heck, $17? And, they'll say something, whatever, but they probably won't not come until next year or something like that. I think it's like delayed, because I think most people aren't all that aware of the price to get in, or the price of a euro, or a price of whatever. But once they get it and they have the experience, and they make the choice to come back or not come back the year after. So some people, they institute that price increase and they say it was a great success, got the same number of people, and then the next year all of a sudden they take a little dip. So it's not quite as simple as they make it out to be sometimes.
My dad always said this, and I believe it's true. Back to talking about my dad again, but he always said, you take care of the fair goer and the rest will take care of itself. And I think that is really true. If you put all your focus and energy into doing what's right for the person attending your fair, whether it's what you charge for admission, or how you transport people around the grounds, or your parking fees, or
bathrooms,
the production, the quality of your bathrooms, right? If you're totally focused on taking care of that customer experience, when you say the rest will take care of yourself, that I think that means the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
I think you will be successful if you focus on what's in the best interest and for the best experience of the attendee coming to your fair. If you're just focused on getting money at your gate or focused on, just having a clean bathroom. I mean, that's not going to happen. But if you're just kind of focused on just booking the best name entertainment you can book, and then you really consider how many people coming to your fair really pay and see an act in your grandstand or your Celeste Center, in our case, you're probably not going to succeed, because that's a small percentage of those coming to your fair overall. But if you focus on the overall experience and the comfort of your clients and safety and welfare of those attending, and there's that experience they take away from your event is high, and they put a value to it is invaluable, like they got their money's worth. Like you might be able to jump from $12 to $17 from one fair to the next, but you have to make up that $5 difference in the experience that they have. Maybe it's more entertainment, or better quality of presentation, clear bathrooms. So I think if someone comes in and they pay that 17 and they realize, wow, this was a much better fair, a much better production, much more of a great experience I can carry home with me, then I don't think they're going to complain. But if they come and they spend that extra $5 and they get what they've always gotten, I don't know if they're going to want to come back the next year, right, Ron?
And to increase the value by $5, unless you're giving them free concerts or something like that, they're going to say it wasn't worth it. No matter what you did, they're going to say it's not worth it. It's going to have to be unbelievable to justify the extra $5.
And some people won't even know what they paid the year before, or even care.
That's true.
Right?
That's very true.
They won't.
I remember they used to do ride promotions, and they would say, let's do whatever, $2 Tuesday, and all rides are $2. I really question in my mind how many people know how much a ride costs, like, because they buy a wristband or they buy a bunch of tickets and they throw them at the thing. I don't think they have any idea of what an individual ride costs. So when they first started that promotion, I was really wondering how many people really get that a ride's $4 or $5. That they really know that.
It's just kind of a catchy little thing you do.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the fairgoers day, if they look back and they look at what emptied out of their wallet compared to what they did, I think that is probably the most telling gauge of their experience. Right? They leave the fair and they've spent a couple $100, and they went on 2 or 3 rides and had a couple hot dogs and did something else, and they probably realized, well, I spent all that money, but what did I get out of it? And I think that's the real takeaway I think most people are going to have, is that overall experience and what came out of their wallet. So it's when you really break down what a fair provides in the way of entertainment, it's or the experience that they receive, it's exponentially higher than what they paid for admittance to get in, if they took in all the free things there are to do and experience. And so I don't think there's a better value of any event in this country
than what you have. No way.
No.
The Natural Resource Park alone is worth the admission. That if you still have that was, I went in there one time, I was blown away. I was like, I can't believe they have this thing on the fairgrounds. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, you can do anything from kayak to fish, to see a lumberjack show, to see and experience an owl raptor presentation. It goes on and on. My daughter caught her first fish in the pond when she was 3 years old. So it's an 8-acre oasis. You feel like you're truly in the woods somewhere in the state of Ohio. There's I don't think I've seen a better natural resources park at any fair in this country. No. It is an incredible asset. So that alone is worth the price of admission.
Yeah, if they charged, I was gonna say, if they charged $12 to get in, nobody would beef. Not one person.
No,
it'd be used to paying it.
It's a marvelous experience right here. And Smokey the Bear knows your name too. He knows all the kids' names. It's unbelievable. I still can't figure out how Smokey does it, but he knows every child's name. It's just uncanny.
It's just like E.T. at Universal Studios.
Yeah.
Did you have this year's fair? Did you see any indications that people are budget conscious, maybe not spending as freely as they did, or is the number still up? Like, for promotions, well received or more well received than in the past couple of years?
Yeah, this year we went back to charging for parking. We took a little break. We charged to park pre-COVID, and we needed to find a revenue source that we once had. So we went back to charging for parking, and we went from zero, no charge for parking, to $10, and got very little. To the point we both made earlier, people don't remember. Some might remember that you didn't charge last year for parking, and some did, but very few complaints or issues came out of charging for parking again. However, what we did at the same time is we went to a bigger and a more robust park and ride program. We have a very well centralized parking lot that people, our fair attendees, every day of the fair could park and shuttle to the fair for free and get dropped off right at our gate. So we took, what some people might think is being a bad situation, charging for parking, which every event I think in this country has to do for the most part, charge for parking, because there is a cost of operating a parking lot. But then we're able to offer free parking and a shuttle ride to the fairgrounds. So, did I notice any sort of that resistance to charges or fees? We certainly had our best Celeste Center season, probably maybe ever, for our paid acts and our Celeste Center grandstand. Our food and beverage spending was up. Now, our attractions and carnival revenue was down a bit, but I totally aligned that with the weather we had and the time the weather came through, kind of chased some people out of the midway when we had the thunderstorms and the rain. So we were down a titch, on the carnival revenue side, but up in the food, up in some other spending categories. So it's sort of a mixture. But the one thing we don't know, and I don't know how many fairs do know, what the pricing at the food concession. So did the volume increase and the pricing was the same as the previous year, or did the pricing increase and the volume was the same, and that's what impacted a rise in gross of food and beverage? Our beer spending and wine spending was up quite a bit too. So who knows? I think, you can read too deep into those sorts of spending matrix items and still be confused as hell. And I think in the end, what matters again is that people left here with a great smile on their face and a good experience, and
Yeah.
and that they ate and drank and rode rides, and that just builds for a better fair for next year for us.
Yeah, food concerns me because some of the prices you see, they're really getting, listen, I sympathize with all the people and the rising costs and all that stuff, but sometimes you see a few things and you know what the cost is, and you're like, wow. But hopefully you have enough vendors that there's some market forces that come into play with that whole thing. I learned, it's hard, and it's hard to sort of herd all those cats because there's so many. Yeah, you have like what, like 75 or 100 food vendors, or 125 or something crazy. You have a big number, I know.
Yeah, I don't, I know we have about 130 locations, so it probably translates to, maybe close to 70. I
Yeah.
don't know the number off because some have obviously multiple locations, but
It's just
yeah,
always hard to get them together, to get them all to agree to something. I learned that one of my first years in the business from Louis Perez at the Ohio State Fair, who's the concession manager, because he was getting on the carnival about doing certain things and or whatever, having uniforms. And I was like, Louis, look at all those food stands that like made out of wood, some of them, back in the day, and they're not doing anything. He goes, but it's a pain in the neck because I can't get them all to. I have to go to each individual food vendor and stop, or I could go to Dominic Vivona and say, Dominic, I want everybody to wear a red shirt right now, and they'd all wear a red shirt, right? And that was a valuable lesson I learned because I never thought about it before. But it is much, much harder to herd all those food people individually with all their opinions and all their stuff than it is to just go to the carnival and tell one person to do something and have them implement it throughout the fairgrounds. But Louis
well,
Perez taught me that.
that's the positive and negative, right? Of it's the very positive is you have a lot of various vendors that you get to work with that sell food and beverage in particular, and so they're bringing different products and a different way of operating and different aesthetics to their operation and their joint. So that's positive, right? So you have competition, and if there's a negative, it's to Louis' point, you just can't, send out a mass email or make a one phone call and get everyone to, jump in line with what you want. And so therein lies our challenge as an institution, working with all these great partners we have as concessionaires, and getting them to agree. And in some cases, you're not asking them to agree, you're asking them to comply with your wishes. Like, hey, I need you to put a valley cloth on the bottom of your trailer.
You haven't bought one in 20 years.
Yeah. So, we're very fortunate. We have a greater demand for locations here than we have opportunities. And that really, Ron, with all this construction, all the changing hardscapes on our property, we're going to have to actually probably limit ourselves to even fewer concession locations. So now we're going to have to do this, back to economics and finances. We're going to have to look at, basically space versus production volume of sales, and
nice.
And variety of offerings, and the diversity of
diversity of offerings. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To decide, who can we carry forward, into the following years, because we just don't have the locations available like we once did before all these changes to the ground. So, in that process, we'll probably ask our partners to, do some things, maybe shrink their footprint, or, maybe, be able to adapt their operation to a higher volume service in order to kind of keep up with the demand on peak days and time periods. So it'll be interesting to see how we pull that off, because we have a lot of data we've pulled together after this fair, and we'll have to kind of sift through it and decide what's our best way forward.
And how to choose.
Yeah, we've got great partners, and it might mean, again, just some adjustments to their size, their footprint, the quantity of stands they have. But we're forced to do it. It's not something we want to choose to do. We just have to because of our footprint.
Yeah, two more things I wanted to touch on. One was your off-season rentals. You guys have the Quarter Horse Congress is an enormous event for you. Do you still do the Arnold Sports Festival?
We do. There? Yep.
I participate. I played table tennis pretty competitively, and I played in the Arnold about, I forget what year. I have a trophy over there somewhere that I won. But I had Kathy and Louie and Virgil all came and watched me play. And the guy who runs the event, Ed Hogshead, he's like, "Why are all those people cheering for you? They're like, I can't get them on the phone." I said, I used to work here, They couldn't believe it, because here's Virgil Strickland, the manager, and they're all cheering for me with
they ignore him, but they cheer for you. But yeah, we still have the Arnold. It's a big event in the city. A lot of the event takes place downtown Convention Center. A lot of it takes place here. So the Arnold is here. We have a pretty incredible event schedule, Ron.
You do. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Quarter Horse is, I think, the world's largest single breed horse show. And we've hosted it here for 58, 57 years. And it gets bigger and better every year. And they're a great partner, a great promoter of this facility. And they produce just a great horse show. So that essentially is the month of October for us, and partway into setup for September. So they're in here for almost 2 months worth of activity, and they're fence to fence. They use the whole property. So that's one of our, I call it a pillar events. We have another big event that uses the whole property. It's the Good Guys Car Show, which is in right before the fair, mid-July. And we just announced another, I would call it our besides the fair, our third pillar event is the Barrett Jackson
car auction,
auto auction.
Yeah,
is they produce 2 in Scottsdale at Western World, and then 1 down in West Palm in April at the fairgrounds there. And they want a East Coast presence, and so they picked us as site for their first ever event in this part of the country, to the size and magnitude that they produce their events. To the scale of what's in Scottsdale, they're producing here starting in June of 2026. So they want it to be an annual event here in Columbus, Ohio at the Expo Center. And it's just a killer organization, just a remarkable event. And we're just so lucky and pleased that they chose us, and they want to have their auto auction and their auto event here next summer. So that was a big coup that Kathy and our sales team brought them here, and
Fit them in the schedule too.
fit them in the schedule. That was the real hard part. That
I
wasn't
imagine it is.
that wasn't their choice dates by any means. They wanted to be at a couple different times, and we're a very busy venue. We have one major exhibition building being built. It's 100,000 square feet of exhibit space and 10 meeting rooms. That's our Ohio Agriculture Center. That's one of the new buildings that's being built. And so that'll give us the ability to book even more events. So we hope to take our dance card from 200 dances or events a year to probably we'll be hitting 300 in a few years. So
wow,
it's opened up some more great opportunities for events and activities here on the property.
Pay for all those improvements.
Yeah, obviously that'll bring higher cost to operating. With we're bringing online 230,000 gross square feet of additional space with these buildings we're building, and so with that you have to condition the space, and they have commercial kitchens in them, so it raises the cost of operating. But we're committed to bringing in more events and additional activities to the property, and we've already started booking the events, and Barrett Jackson is coming on board because of all the physical improvements and changes to the ground. So that's we're beneficiaries of all this great work being done right off the bat with Barrett Jackson booking with us.
That's great. And I guess I'd be remiss because I'll get a phone call from Mary, but I should ask about the Tally Amusements and being a relatively new partner. They haven't been there that long, but
I think this was their fifth fair is what they told
fair,
me.
yep, that sounds about right.
Took a day or a year or so off for
come
COVID.
all the way up from Texas to visit you in Ohio.
Yeah, they're grabbing equipment out of their quarters down in Texas, and then some equipment comes out of all the way from San Diego, from the San Diego County Fair. So a long trip to Columbus, Ohio, and then I think what they just did is move some equipment to Minnesota to the state fair, and then back down to Texas. So they kind of scattered themselves. There's still a few pieces of equipment left behind. I've got to call Tom and see if he still wants some of the roller coaster loads or if I can keep them.
Put them in the yard for the kids.
Yeah, but man, I don't know if you could ask for a better carnival and a better partner. They have an incredible presentation, and the care and the safety record and what they put in and how they take care of their equipment and operate their rides and games and food is impeccable. They're an amazing partner of ours.
That's great. I know they appreciate being there. Well, Adam, we've been talking for like an hour already, believe it or not. I can't believe it.
I know, I'm really kind of tired of talking to you, Ron.
I was just getting started. I was just starting to enjoy it.
Wait, don't you have any more great questions to ask me? Or
yeah, the big one I didn't get to ask was it was more of a I wonder if it's a regret, but not sending your kid to William and Mary instead to Notre Dame, was that a big mistake you made in your life, or did you just have a temporary loss of sanity?
You tell me. How should I answer that? You should ask my daughter. Ask my daughter.
I'm sure she's doing fantastic.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. William and Mary would have been a great second choice for her, but she was smart enough, like her mom, that she had quite a choice of schools to attend, and she picked Notre Dame, and is all the better for it. So we certainly glad she made that choice. She'd like to believe, before the start of her freshman year, that we were guiding her that direction. But paying the tuition bill every year when she was getting offers to not have to pay to go to school, I would have preferred that she would have gone to William and Mary.
Yeah, William and Mary is pretty affordable, actually.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's just a choice that was made, and I don't think she regrets it. It was a great institution. So I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to go to Notre Dame.
She would have had a better time with the people I would introduce her to.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you
it's
so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on. I got to have you on again sometime because we barely even touched on the fair, but I like to talk about, because like you said and other people say, what are you going to ask about? What are you going to, but I like it because I just like to elicit information about, you for the viewers and, just some philosophy about how you run the fair. I mean, I could ask, oh, how many food stands do you have? Oh, how many, who cares? I mean, you care, but you
Some
can ask
people do.
anybody that. You can read a book or, use AI and figure it out. I
Eh,
think, getting into things like who the influences were in your life and what your dad said to you, those are the key things that I enjoy about the podcast and hopefully other people do as well.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, it's the human side that's really truly important. So it was fun. Let's do it again.
I would love that. And hopefully I'll see you soon. I'll see you in the convention probably, if not before.
To see you soon.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All
Tell
right,
everybody I
you
said
too,
hi.
Ron. This was
Kathy,
great.
Brett's not there anymore, is he?
Brett's retired. Brett
You finally
retired.
found him up in the attic?
Yeah. We were able to crane him out of the attic of our office.
I said, that
I'd
guy's
like
got
to.
job security. They can't ever find him. He's upstairs somewhere.
Yeah, there's a guy, take the tallest guy here and put him up in the attic. It's perfect. I don't know. He had to walk sideways to get his feet to fit on the boards of the stairs. So his feet, he's what is he? He's about 6'6" or something.
He's a
I
tall
don't
guy,
know.
no question.
He had to duck his head, to get up the stairs. But he lived through it to retire without getting a big knot on his head. So good for him.
Kept to his own. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you very soon.
I hope so.
Thanks a lot.
Here on.
This podcast is brought to you by Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Our staff of professionals can guide you through your setup, assist with customer service, even on the weekends when you most need it, and help increase your sales through promotions that work. Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Sign up today at innovativeticketing.com.